I published this in February this year, and there's a lot in there I could not possibly do in even an hour, but go there, and I think those who are investigating TBI know that the pathophysiology is quite numerous, and they are presented in, well, the primary is axonal injury, right? The disconnection of the white matter and the axons. But, alongside, you've got mitochondrial dysfunction, reactive oxygen species, and oxidative stress. Axonal degeneration and growth inhibitors. I mentioned that because I know there's research going on in UCI about in that particular area, and you're looking for markers as well. So you want to, I'll touch on that a little bit later. Autophagy, lysosomal pathways dysfunction is programmed cell replacing themselves. Apoptotic cell death, the programmed cell death. Neuroinflammation, big field. The excitotoxicity. So these are various factors that actually have evidence and data to show that when you deliver red or near-infrared light directly to the cells, you can modify the outcomes. Now, I say we can do it in different ways. I mentioned gamma. This is a big field that's being explored. There are groups out there that are exploring sensory flickering 40 hertz and deliver to the eyes, then to the ears, and see that actually the brain responds significantly. Now that's really interesting. We are doing a collaboration with University of Utah. It's been going on for a few years. This was published recently, and they relate to athletes that have been investigated and see the changes. Right? They have reported experience of traumatic brain injury and symptoms. Now they're still healthy, but look at the changes in some of these expressions like reaction time. I marked it in red because these are the significant ones. Reaction time, grip with a dominant hand and grip with a non-dominant hand. BSD is really the evaluation of the balance and so on. The changes are actually quite significant, tested over, I believe, 12 weeks. So there is really good, I say, preliminary evidence. We know there are more coming up because they haven't got to write and publish quite a number of studies. Now, talking about CTE, this was published actually out of Boston University by Margaret Nazar's lab. And a circle of possible, we all know that you don't know for sure you have CTE until you do an autopsy. But the symptoms I think the symptoms are familiar. And here's what's happening. There's 4 cases. I mentioned that on 4 retired football players. One of them is here, Larry Carr. He'll speak tomorrow. Now, he's subject number 1. Actually, this is Larry's data in the trial. First, he had 1 week with Dr. Nazar's lab in BU with a handheld, it's wrapped over the head, photobiomodulation device. It improved. Then the 4 subjects go away because actually the study stopped, and then for 2 months they see really this distinct decline in the faculties, the cognition and everything. Then because it's so troublesome, Larry can speak more tomorrow, that Dr. Nazar's decided that they really have to go back to photobiomodulation. And you can see the improvement when they get back is like almost immediate. Now, these are evaluations of like executive function. There are 8 here. But I just want you to notice a trend. Let's go to PTSD, some things like PTSD, depression, pain. This executive is like how you relate to your family and community. The trend is they all consistently do badly, or well, you do well. I mean, going down for PTSD questionnaire is good after 1 week, but go away. Everybody with symptoms of CTE actually starts the degeneration process again. Then get back into a treatment, and they improve. These are the trends that is pretty consistent. Now there's a lesson here. Something must be happening in the back end. It's probably genetic, something like Alzheimer's, that photobiomodulation seems to be able to arrest, but not reverse. I think it's, in my mind, it's impossible to reverse your genetic makeup. But this is promising.
I have my degree is in exercise physiology. I am not a neurologist. I'm not a neuropsychologist, but I work with some of the best there are at the University of Utah. I played football since age 10, probably really started at age 5 with sandlot kind of football, all the way through to 25, so 15, 20 years of it. I was very active. I played middle linebacker and center in high school, middle linebacker in college, and played a couple of years in the CFL. I went through some pretty dark times. I was probably in my 40s where it started to hit me, where I was struggling, but it was very gradual. It was very gradual until I got into my 50s. Then it started to accelerate a little bit. When I was 60, it got really bad. It was a situation where, in fact, I think my wife and I watched League of Denial, and she looked at me and she said, "Go to a neurologist right now." And I agreed to do that. So that's when I was actually tested, and the doctor said probable etiology for these changes is multiple mild head trauma with multiple concussions. Mild depression and anxiety may play a minor role in these symptoms, but would not fully account for them. Problems with attention and memory are hallmarks of significant brain injury. And that was really hard for me to take because I love football. I was good at it. It brought me attention. It gave me a scholarship. I wish I was playing now so I could have made some money at it. But I love the sport. I love the mechanics of it. I love the training. I love everything about it. But to realize that the sport you love was destroying you, was killing you, was really hard to take. It was really difficult for me. So I continued on. Somehow I got through the next couple of years. And my wife, I had to retire. I started as a university professor my first 8 years out of college. I ended up as a middle school PE teacher because that's about all I could take. No, and really middle school PE is not as calm as you might think. It's pretty tough. But that's where I ended up because I just couldn't deal with all the things that were related to being a university professor. But I had to retire because one time my principal came in and told me he wasn't going to pay me for something. And I kind of punked him. And he kind of walked around the table to get away from me. And I saw some fear in his eyes. And I thought, I better get out of this before I get fired and lose my pension. So I retired. We had a cancer scare. And because of that, my wife retired. We're LDS. So she decided that, well, maybe if we go on a senior couples mission, this will get better, doing something good. So we ended up going to Boston. It didn't do good because you don't go 2,000 miles away from your grandkids, live in a 900 square foot apartment, share a car, and have people looking over your shoulder all day long, and with your spouse 24/7. Nothing against that, but you don't do that to relax. I mean, you just don't. And so it was getting really bad. We were thinking about coming home early. But I realized I'd done some research, and I realized that Ann McKee and Boston University were right down the road. So I emailed Ann McKee, and she answered me surprisingly and invited my wife and I to her office. So we went and met with Ann, spent about an hour and a half with us. She is an unbelievable, kind person. I cannot say enough about Dr. McKee. But she encouraged us. But the bottom line is she doesn't see patients. She didn't have anything to give me for hope. She did refer me to Dr. Stearns and Dr. Cantu, which I went and saw both of them. But in both situations, we left the office without any hope. There was nothing to do. Exercise. I'm an exercise physiologist. I've exercised for 40 years. Eat better. I eat as good as I can. I mean, on the weekends I go off, but I eat pretty good. I was taking medication. I was doing everything that I was supposed to do. I don't indulge in alcohol or tobacco or anything like that. So it really didn't make sense to me that I was losing it. I mean, I was really going downhill. So one night we'd had an argument, and I saw in my wife, she was crying, and I saw fear. And I'd never hit her. I'd never been physical with her, but she was scared. And at that point, I sat down and wrote Anne another email, begging her for something that would help. This was the response I got from her right away. She said, one of my colleagues has approval for a clinical trial using transcranial light emitting diode, LED, for TBI symptoms. And she went on and described her colleague, who is Dr. Marnie Nazer, who works at the VA in Boston. Well, I went there. I'd never heard of LED light treatments. I'd never seen it. I didn't believe it, but I was so desperate that we entered into her study. She was studying military veterans coming back from the Gulf War for Gulf War illness using lights, and was having success. This is me on the left. The protocol was 18 sessions, 20 minutes PBM over 6 weeks. She used these great big MedX infrared lights that were really hot. And by the end of the treatment, I felt my skin burning. It was really uncomfortable. But my wife said after about 3 weeks, she started to notice a little bit of a difference. I said, that's just placebo. Nothing's happening. How can you shine light through a head and get any effects? Come on. I'm not stupid. But it continued to work. So after that, I took a couple months off. Or what was it? No, it's I think 6 weeks off. We did testing, pre-testing, pre-testing, and after. So after about 8 weeks off of the treatment, I was starting to feel pretty bad. And the point where we knew we had to get back on it was when we were driving in Boston, and a guy walks in front of the car, and I slam on the brakes, and I just do that. That's all. And he starts yelling and flipping me off and doing all sorts of things. And my wife literally has to keep me in the car from getting out and doing some damage. And I had my missionary tag on. That wouldn't have looked good if I was going to fight this guy in the middle of Boston. So anyways, after I was off it, we got back on, and I went on a home treatment for another month and a half. Anyways, these are my results. I won't spend a lot of time going over them, but you could see the dramatic change in every measure here. My mental health, depression, I didn't know I was depressed, and it went down dramatically. My anxiety went down. The impulsivity, that's kind of a difficult one to understand, but at first, the pre-PPM, I was just reacting. I was overreactive. And after PPM, you can see they just flipped, where I was very conscious of the decisions that I was making. And even though I only lost a couple of milliseconds, my performance improved dramatically. Executive function. They all follow the usage, the stopping, and then the usage of the light. And you can notice that using the headset, which is a much lower power, has just as much of effect as those really heavy, hot red lights. You can see at the end, some of those even improved. This is part of the article that she published. I was part of this. And I left Boston with these results thinking I'm going to change football. I've got an answer. What's the biggest problem with football? It's concussions, it's head injuries, it's the whole thing. I'm going to talk to everybody about this. What do you think they said to me? They just patted me on the back and said, I'm glad you found something. But this guy down here, he has something too. And the guy over there, he has something too. Everybody has something, but this is different, which is they all say. So finally, Dr. Wild, who is the director of the TBI and Concussion Center at the University of Utah Medical Center, she listened to me. She was the only one to listen to me. And she had just transferred from Baylor to the University of Utah. So the fact that she was hearing me was really something. And she said, and I'll just read this. When Larry first approached me shortly after my new position in Salt Lake City, just over 6 years ago, I had not any prior experience or exposure to photobiomodulation. And I was initially a bit skeptical about the magnitude and reproducibility of the treatment effects in the literature he shared with me. However, as there are few treatment alternatives that have reliably demonstrated physiological changes after head injury, and there's a paucity of treatments that are low risk, well tolerated, cost effective, and easy to apply, I was intrigued, and I agreed to work with him to conduct some initial studies. The first study that we did a firefighter study, and we looked at 15 Las Vegas firefighters. We did a baseline evaluation, PBM intervention, and then follow-up evaluation. It was 8 weeks of 20 minutes a day. The sample was 16 males. Average age was 50, with 16 years of education. The results were impressive. The depression went down 35%. PTSD went down 40%. Pain interference went down 15%. Attention inhibition, working memory, executive function, processing speed, visual memory, and overall cognition. These results are impressive because these are active, healthy firefighters. They go out every day, one of the most active fire stations in the country. And yet their executive function is improving, their processing speed is improving. That's important when you're a first responder, when you come upon a scene, obviously. So needless to say, they didn't give us our headsets back when we wanted them at the end of the study, and they still have them there today because they were sleeping for the first time. They were doing better on their exams when they wanted to be a captain or something. I mean, one of them lost his wife during COVID, and he didn't think he could have got through it without this. Firefighters lose more to suicide than fires. So these guys are a prime example of who could benefit from this. So our next study, we were going to do college football players and college soccer players, women's soccer players. Now, COVID got in the way, so we had to kind of delay this. But I have this here just for observational purposes. If you can see right in between the ventricles, that space. That's called a CSP, cavum septum pellucidum. It's in the general population. If they're under 10, it's probably only 4 or 5%. If they're older, it could be up to 10 to 20 to 30% of the population. In retired football players with symptoms, it was in like 90% of them. Anyways, in our college football players, these are 21-year-old kids, it was present in 95% of those players. For the women's soccer players, it was present, we only had 9, but it was present in all 9 of them. So it's just an observation. You don't know if this has clinical significance, but it's interesting. And there's going to be a presentation in England a little bit later next month on this. But you can see, even just glancing, I'm not a neurologist, but you could look at the women's soccer brain and that they look kind of worse than the football brains if you really took a look at it. Anyway, so we ended up doing an ex-athlete study, and these are all ex-collision athletes. These are pilot studies. These are proof of concept. We didn't have a control group. We just recruited 50 ex-collision athletes, mostly football, but there were a few women that were in battered white syndrome situations. There was a couple firefighters. There was a couple of MMA fighters. There was 49 adults. 90% were male. Average age was 45 with 4 to 30 years of exposure to repetitive head impacts. This is their brains. So you can see these guys just played college football. They didn't play any professional football. 30 years later, that's the current football players. That's 30 years later. Anybody can see the difference that happened there. Obviously, the ventricles are way enlarged. There's lots of atrophy. CSP was present in 98% of our sample. So these guys were looking at this, they're in bad shape. Talking to them, they're just normal, everyday kind of guys. If you dig deep, they've got some issues. They've got some problems that they're hiding. Anyway, this is what we found. In the cognitive areas, we found learning and memory, executive function, attention, and fluid intelligence all improved significantly. This has been published or is in the process, has been accepted for publication. PTSD, 29%. Depression, 35%, very consistent with the firefighters. Sleep quality, 28%, and reintegration, 12%. And then for the motor component, we looked at reaction time, fine motor skill, grip strength, and balance, all improved. All these measures are significant improvements. So we were pretty excited about this. So we wanted to see what was the change in the scan data associated with this. So this is using the diffusion scanning. We saw that improved structural connections throughout the brain, improved microstructural integrity and organization of the axons, new cell growth and reduced inflammation, regeneration and repair of damaged axon, and reduced inflammation and strengthened cell membranes. We were pretty excited when we saw these. We also saw that it improved structural connections that related to the reduction specifically in PTSD. Improved microstructural integrity and organization, the same areas that we just went on to, but this is specific for PTSD. This is our functional connectivity work. As I said, I'm not a neurologist. I'm not going to go through this because I'll just embarrass myself. But actually, these results is what recruited a couple of neuroscientists into the study where they thought, this stuff is bogus, this doesn't work. But when they saw this, they were all in and they really came forward. Bottom line is pre-PBM, the default mode network is overly connected with brain regions that are typically not associated with it. And then post, the default mode network connectivity reflects a more typical pattern seen in healthy brains. So we finally got over COVID. We were able to go to BYU football. And to get a head coach in the Big 12 conference to agree to let you study their players is really a big deal. I mean, they're very superstitious. They get paid a lot of money, and they don't want to believe that what you're doing is going to interrupt their performance or their schedule whatsoever. So it took about 2 or 3 years working on them before we actually were able to get them to do this. We got 16 players that were randomly selected or 32 players. They were randomly put in either an active treatment, PBM group, or a sham group. Ages was 21, and the distribution of the positions is below that. Same thing, same tests exactly that we did with the ex-athletes. This was the results. The PBM group is in the solid lines. The sham is in the dotted lines. You can see that in 8 out of the 10, and these are all performance-related, what we believe to be things that affect performance in these players. And you can see 8 out of the 10 measures improved with PBM. 8 out of the 10 measures went down in the sham group. Now, unfortunately, these were not quite significant. And if you were to just draw your conclusions there, then they'll say it doesn't do any good. As an ex-athlete, as somebody that is concerned about milliseconds and micro changes, you can see a pattern here. I'm sorry, you can see a pattern. And I think the pattern specifically in impulsivity, in sustained attention, mental speed, anxiety and stress, and grip strength. These are highly trained athletes. They train really hard before the season, during the season, and in the off season. The treated group actually got stronger in the grip strength from pre to post. Not much, but the sham group got a little bit weaker. So again, we wanted to look at the scan data and to see how this compared to that scan data to see if we could get any more information. This is a diffusion scan with the sham group, and you can see that there were no changes to the white matter integrity in the sham group, no improvements. There could have been changes going in the wrong direction, which they probably were, because there's a lot of publications that show that after the course of a single season. So we compared that to the treated group, and this showed the PBM reduces inflammatory response throughout the entire brain. And we related these changes to fewer post-concussive symptoms, improved attention, improved processing speed, improved reaction time, improved mental flexibility, decreased depression, and decreased anxiety. We were really excited to see this because the guys were only wearing the headsets maybe 3 times a week, probably 2 times a week. And with that kind of intensity, they should have really been wearing them probably 5 days a week. But still, to get this kind of dramatic change in inflammation pre to post was exciting to us. Then we also saw it improved disruptive brain functions that promoted axonal growth, repair, and resiliency. In the PBM group, these changes were significantly related to improved grip strength, reduced impulsivity, greater adaptability, improved mental status, and improved sleep quality. So, in my mind, not being a neuroscientist, having played football, having seen all of the publications out there that show there's a damage to the brain from pre to post season, even in little peewee football players, we're showing here that from pre to post, their brain, in my mind, is actually healthier. Is less inflammation and greater structural integrity. There's probably other things that we didn't measure. We're still studying this. We're still putting out the data. This is brand new data, but we'll see what happens with this. Anyways, we have a number of ongoing studies that are ready to go. We've got a moderate to severe TBI study that's starting as we speak. We're working with fire department. We're going to look at, we've got a football team. The whole team is using them now. We're going to watch them and see what happens to this. There's a lot out there that says, how bad is CTE? How prevalent is it? Do we need to worry about it? I can tell you it's real. It almost killed me. It almost destroyed my family. It almost had my wife leave me. But this saved my life. And if Anna McKee hadn't referred me at the very beginning up to the 12th floor of the VA, I would not be here. It's as simple as that. There were a lot of attempts to not be here, but with the patience of a wife, we've been married 52 years. It's just amazing. Anyways, for my last 5 to 10 minutes, I wanted to ask a friend to come up here. Rico Petrini was part of our ex-athlete study. He played for the Oregon State Beavers, a 4-year starter. Want him to talk a little bit about his activity.
As Larry said, I played 4 years at inside linebacker at Sarah High School in San Mateo, California, where Tom Brady played. So very competitive private high school. Got a scholarship to Oregon State to play football. I started 4 years at inside backer there as well. First person to go to college in my family. So it was really important to me to have that opportunity and to play at that level. You know, I ended up my senior year finishing the Pac-10 and leading in tackles and getting defensive MVP, which were great accolades at that time. But now I look at that, and that was just part of the stack on to how many repetitive hits I had over my lifetime. So using the CLF's model Tim's mentioned earlier, with RHI. I estimate I had at least 15,000 subconcussive hits. So with football, they estimate that the G forces are between 9 Gs and up to 120 Gs. Fighter pilots, all you that just saw the new Top Gun, that new stealth plane was supposed to be a 9G plane. It's the equivalent of a 30-mile-an-hour car accident every time. So I had 15,000 of those. So as you can guess, that does a number on your brain. But for me, I thought I got out unscathed. I had a knee problem, I had a neck problem, back problem, normal football stuff. 20 years went by and I was doing pretty good. I was doing Tough Mudders at 40. I was still feeling pretty good. And right around 48 years old, it was March of 2021, I had like a complete systemic failure. It was like my body just completely cut out on all fronts. There's been a lot of emphasis on the neurological side, but I had issues with my gait. You'd look at the bottom of my Vans, one whole side, the left side was completely worn down. I had the head tilt. I had double vision, or vision would go in and out, even though I had corrective surgery that was supposed to be permanent at 2015 vision. Massive cranial pressure, a lot of other symptoms that aren't just the mental symptoms that we're talking about. A lot of dysautonomia. My temperature runs 95.6. Resting heart rate can jump up to 200 and then drop back down. So these are things that are not normal. They're not things that are Alzheimer's or other things. I was in good shape. I was still healthy. So this all flagged for me, and I didn't know what the hell was going on. I saw my primary, told them all these symptoms. They listed them out. There was upwards of 35. I actually made a spreadsheet for them of everything that was going on. My testosterone, 900, went down to 64. And so, I was just trying to find out what was going on. And my primary thought it was neurological, so they referred me to a neurologist. And as was mentioned at dinner, the earliest appointment was a year out. So what they did is they did a sleep study. They found out that I only get 12 minutes of REM a night, which is common to what Max said and other people that have brain injury. So I was not getting into any deep sleep. I wasn't getting a lymphatic flush. I didn't know these things at the time. I've become more educated kind of about what happens. But I was dealing with all of these symptoms at once. I was in a dark place was the worst part. I'd never had mental health issues, no issues genetically or anywhere in my family. And yet all of a sudden I had like what I can call an angel and a devil on my shoulders. And I would drive to work and there was this bridge that I'd have to go across. And if I made it across the bridge, I knew I was going to live that day. So it was really hard to continue to live like that. And they gave me Lexapro. And with brain injury, all drugs don't work the same for all of us. It actually made me worse. So I was even darker. And I was becoming more dysfunctional. And so I didn't know where to go. So I went online to a Facebook group, brain injury, and I just asked, I said, here's my story. Can anybody help me? And one of the members directed me to Larry. They go, hey, there's this guy for football players. He wants to save football. And he's starting this pilot program with photobiomodulation. And I remember that day, that moment, writing him on my AOL account, because that's how old I am, and begging to be a part of this program and telling him that I don't think I can live unless I find something that's going to help this. And he reached out to me right away. And that was in March, as I said. And by July of 21, I was flying to Utah. And my wife, I flew alone. My wife didn't think I was going to even make it on the flight or even get there. So the fact that I made it was like surprising to her in itself. We did the battery test. We did physical, mental, cognitive, social. They did the chair test. I couldn't get out of the chair without falling back and taking out the 2 poor interns that were trying to monitor me. I couldn't do figure 8 test. Recall, I couldn't recall more than 2 things on the memory test. I was a complete mess. Obviously, I was off the scale with depression, suicidality, sleep issues. So after all this, they did a functional MRI. After all of that, they gave me this device, which you'll see over in the back. Mine's not that technologically advanced, but the Vielight device, I had a neurogamma. They gave me this thing with 5 red lights on it. And I was thinking, are you kidding me? I just flew here to put basically Christmas tree lights on my head. Is this really going to be the answer? And they told me what to do. They told me to use it, 4 times a week, 20 minutes in the morning. And I did that. And Larry would check in on me because he knew I was kind of in a rough spot. And 2 weeks later, I kind of contacted Larry. I go, am I supposed to feel anything already? Because my wife just noticed I was singing in the shower, and that's not been my thing. And he goes, yeah, you might start noticing things. Guys have reported between the first 2 weeks and a month, you might see some differences. And so I just kept with it. That was kind of a positive sign. And I kept building on and building on. And I felt that I was having more energy. I wasn't having the neuro crash or fatigue. I felt like I was sleeping better. My mood got better, obviously. And it was the only thing I had used. Nothing had changed in my protocol. I didn't know enough. I wasn't using supplements. I wasn't sleeping very good. So it was just the PBM that I had been using at that point. And so they came back and retested me at 6 months. And by that time, I felt like I was probably 60% improved on all of my symptoms. And I went from not being able to get on a plane to be excited like a big football game. Like I was ready to show them, hey, this is it. I'm going to tear this up. I'm going to pass all these tests this time. And I went through it and I did great. I mean, I don't know the results. Larry, you can talk to him. I'm open. I'm not HIPAA. So go ahead and you can ask me anything. I'm an open book. I want to share with everybody here because that's the point of it. So after this, at lunch, if you want to talk to me on any of the points, I'm happy to talk about it. But going through that, I had done much better on the figure 8. My reaction time felt more like when I was playing football. I could get out of the chair and I could recall more than 2 things on the memory testing. And then the self-diagnosed stuff, mood, behavior, that kind of thing were better. And my wife even said, I've got my husband back. So that was the biggest thing. Because I used to have dinner and I didn't even realize I was having the problems I was having. And I'd eat with my 4 kids. And partway through, I was so bad, I'd look up and there'd be nobody at the table. So I would go back to my bedroom, self-isolate, feel guilt, shame. The process would repeat. So to have a semi-normal family life and to be able to manage these symptoms and to be able to be in a place where I could hold a job, number one, to feed my family, but also to feel like I could actually interact with people was amazing. So we're at year 3 now. I hold a sales job for a company that's $200 million in sales. I travel all over the nation now. I have to remember names and faces. I have to do presentations in front of strangers. I do have issues all the time. This is not the magic pill. I don't want to make anybody think that. But the fact that I can stay employed, I can still have a good quality of life with a neurodegenerative condition and feel like I am maintaining some semblance of a stability is all I could ever ask for. And so I'm very grateful to Larry because he wants to say football, but he definitely saved my life. And I'm grateful to Vielight as well for their product because it was the game changer. And it really created an improvement that I don't know where I would be. Well, I know where I would be, and it's just not a good place. So thank you very much.